Hi friends, my name is Luciano Gonzalez and I make videos on the internet. I usually make videos about jump chains and choose your own adventures, and in today's video we are going to be talking about jump chains and choose your own adventures. We're going to be keeping it pretty focused on jump chains, but some of the principles that I talk about here may appear in similar forms in some more general choose your own adventures. If you are new here, I'm super stoked to see you, and I hope that we get to have a wonderful chat about what we're going to be talking about today. And if you are not new here, I'm so excited to see you again, and I hope that we get to know each other a little bit better. Today, I want to talk about items, specifically items in jump chains. Hi! We are now in a new section. Specifically, we are still in My Drive, which was where we were before, and now we are looking at a specific jump that I made. About a year or so ago, I made a jump for Ty the Tasmanian Tiger. This is a popular platforming video game that came out in the early 2000s. Lots of people are familiar with it. I played it extensively, I really enjoyed it, and there wasn't a jump for it, so I went ahead and made one. We are not going to be taking a look at everything in this because it's not really the purpose of this video. I just wanted to show you all what some items looked like before we got started talking about some rules and some more iconic examples of items that someone could find in other jumps. So as you can see here, there's the intro section, there's a starting location, there are the origins. In this particular jump, there's 3 origins. There's Tasmanian Tiger, which essentially makes you either Ty himself or an ally, maybe even a sibling of Ty's, an animal friend, which allows you to be one of the animal homies that Ty meets along the way during the adventure, or an animal foe, which makes you a member of Boss Cass's faction, Boss Cass being the antagonist. You can see the perks. We are not here looking through all of this, but now you can go ahead and see the items. So before we go ahead and go any further, it's worth taking a second to talk about this particular section. You will see this in most of my jumps, and you will see this in a lot of jumps that are not particularly old. This is a sort of just generic section that helps talk about some of the common rules that people apply to items that are fiat backed. The term fiat backing, for those of you who don't know, or for those of you who don't remember, refers to something that is like a perk in the sense that it always works across settings. Typically, this is something that you pay points for, but you can also earn fiat backing for things through other perks. Those are somewhat informally known as fiat extenders. There are a few jumps that have them, or you can earn them through scenarios. There's some items that can be used to grant fiat backing to other things, although those items are pretty rare and very powerful. But let's go ahead and take a second to look at some of the rules that people will often apply that I just went ahead and codified into this, so that way no one had to ask me any questions. Items can be imported into similar items, so weapons to weapons, clothes to clothes, vehicles to vehicles, buildings to buildings, that kind of thing. Item alterations and upgrades, especially if something has fiat backing already, will be maintained between jumps and are fiat backed. So if you have Ty's boomerangs and you made them cooler, you made them sharper, you made them better in some way, that does not go away at the end of this jump and is something that stays with them. And then there is the discount section. There's the discount notes for getting items in this particular jump. All origins get their 100 point items for free. Ignore the typo. That was just me making a Lucianoism, which is a bit of a joke term that people who know my jumps and people who know me quite well are familiar with for when I make a silly little typo. It's meant to say all origins get their 100 point items for free, with subsequent purchases in that origin being 50% off, that kind of thing. And then building complexes, unless stated to have an in-world location, will be placed near your starting location in Jump and will be attached to your warehouse after the jump is complete, and then they can be imported into future jumps as desired. That last little bit is a little bit confusing, so I'll go ahead and mention what I mean there right now. Essentially, when you finish this jump, if you have any building, complex, or location items, which is a common type of item in a lot of jumps, you will be able to import that as you wish in future jumps. So if you were able to get all of the Outback, which is a scenario reward for a scenario in this jump, and you wanted to import it into a future jump, you could do that when you started the future jump, or you could leave it in your warehouse or some other equivalent where it will be undisturbed by the rest of the setting. Now let's go ahead and take a look at some of the actual items in this particular jump. So if you are a Tasmanian tiger, your free item is just a pair of regular boomerangs, but these boomerangs are upgradable. They can be imbued with elemental energies, which would give them more kick, meaning they hit harder, and also grant them more useful abilities. So this is a pretty common type of item. It is a weapon item. Lots of different jumps have them. This next item right here is a set of allies. This is a little bit trickier, but it is not super uncommon to find a purchasable item in a jump that is a friend or some sort of ally or some sort of connection that will be able to give you some sort of help in some way, provide a service for you. I really like those types of items, and I thought it fit for the Thai origin, so I put it in here. And then this is a little bit of a rarer and weirder item. This is something that is iconic to the setting that I decided to turn into a fiat-backed item. In this case, it is the Thunder Egg, which is one of the collectibles, the main collectible in the Tasmanian Tiger first game, and if I remember correctly, a significant collectible in the rest of the games as well, at least in the second one, but I might be misremembering, which is a power source that can be used to power up plenty of examples of science and technology. This particular Thunder Egg is a very specific Thunder Egg that is incredibly powerful. It is not something that exists in the canon setting, but rather is something that I invented, extrapolating from existing lore and just creating a better version because it was the capstone item, which is the most expensive item for this origin. I wanted to make sure that you got some real bang for your buck with it. You can go ahead and take a look at the rest of these items. We can also go ahead and take a look at the scenario, so that way you can see what I mentioned, which is yes, you get the sum totality of the game setting with you as part of your new evil empire. I'm very glad that I did not misspeak, because oftentimes when I do videos, I like to do them as unrehearsed as possible, and sometimes that means I make little mistakes. But it's very nice that I didn't do it this time. Now we're going to go ahead and take a look at some different items, some items that are a little bit more iconic to their settings, so that way people can get a feel for some of the different types of items that you can find in different jump chains and different jump docks. Hello! We are now in the classic Sonic jump chain. This is one of the, to my knowledge, older Sonic jumps, but it has some pretty remarkable stuff, and I always like to show it off because I think it is a very solid jump. We're not going to get into like the weeds of all of this. We're not going to dive super in depth. We're just going to hop on down to the items, so that way you can see how another jump maker has sort of fiat backed and made more iconic the different items in a popular franchise. For those of you who don't know what this means by classic Sonic, this means the older Sonic games like Sonic the Hedgehog, Sonic the Hedgehog 2, that kind of thing, Sonic and Knuckles, those kinds of games. Now we are in the item section, which in this particular jump is called gear. That is something that is both amusingly emblematic of a different period in jump making history, as many older jumps call their items gear, and also something that's kind of neat. I feel like calling them gear makes sense for this particular jump, but now we're going to go ahead and actually take a look at them. This particular jump right here does have 4 items per origin, which many jumps do. Many of my jumps have 4 items per origin, but sometimes I will have 3, or in jumps with secondary origins, even 2 items per origin. So that's just something to keep in mind. I do want to go ahead and show people a specific set of items. I really like the Freedom Fighter origin. I have 2 favorite origins in this jump: the Freedom Fighter, which is Sonic's origin, and the Conqueror, which is Eggman's origin. This is one of those jumps that is a character origin jump. For some settings, that makes a lot more sense than trying to do it any other way. Amusingly, the other jump that we were looking at, Mai Tai the Tasmanian Tiger jump, was also a character origin jump, although it was mostly, it was a little bit more of a not quite that than this one is. This is very decidedly a character origin jump. As you can see here, the first little bit, the first little item is the super shoes. These are very nice little kicks, very handy, very skilled. A prize inside is a much stronger item. This is essentially a portable set of containers that contain special power-ups from these games. They have the shield, the flame shield, the aqua shield, and the thunder shield. And then there is the dust devil, which is one of the planes that can be found in those older games. And the capstone item for this origin is a personal zone, which is essentially a level of these games that you can design and customize yourself. I think that that's really neat. You can see a lot of thought went into this origin and its items. I promise you that if you were to go and look up the classic Sonic Jumpchain and look through the perks, you would find them to be every bit as cool as the items. It's also a jump with a capstone booster, which means that there is an expensive perk that gives you a cool benefit by itself, but also buffs the most expensive perks in each origin. I do think that this jump is best for getting Eggman's stuff. Let's see if we can take a look at it for 2 seconds. The first item is the floating hovercraft vehicle that Eggman loves to use in these games, and the one that he uses as a way to pilot his other vehicles. After that, there is a radar item which allows you to find supernatural items. In this particular jump, it's the Chaos Emeralds, the Chaos Rings, and the Time Stones. And if you are someone who is a fiat-backed scientist, if you have big brain science, magitech perks, you can definitely find lots of ways to make this very handy in future jumps. There is the Flight, which is an army item that gives you a set of followers that you can call every once in a while. And it is just an army that is ready to follow you and do your commands and can be really devastating in a lot of different jumps. Army items are always incredibly strong, and it's very funny to see them whenever they show up. The Death Egg schematics is something that is a little bit rarer. You can find them if you look far enough, but it's essentially a quest item where this is one of the simpler quests. This is an item that gives you a way to build a Death Egg. It gives you all the notes that you need. It gives you all of the initial robots that you need to get started, but it doesn't actually give you a Death Egg. You have to build one yourself using both what it gives you and what other resources you get from interacting with your environments. These items are pretty rare, but funnily enough, I have a couple of them. Lots of other jumpers will experiment with them and will figure out ways to put them into settings where they make a lot of sense. And now we're going to go and take a look at something that I've always found really fascinating: when an item has a full customization section. We are now over on the Metroid jump document. This is not the newest jump document in the world, and I don't even know if this is the most recent version of this particular jump document, but it is very handy. It is something that I really like, and even barring all of the stuff that I said, just as additional context, this is a phenomenal jump document with a very distinctive section. It has a section all about customizing your own power armor. Let's go ahead and take a look at that over near the bottom. Also, if you've never seen this jump document, I highly recommend that you take a look at it. It is really fun. I think that there's so much to learn from here. So, this section is the power armor section. Some jump documents will have items that are very distinctive and will have their own full sections where you can customize them using points. Another jump that I can think of that has a section like this is the jump for Doom Eternal. There was a fairly recent Dead Space jump that had a baby section like this for buying your own spaceship. And honestly, for a lot of different spaceship stuff, you can find sections like this. If I remember correctly off the top of my head, the Star Wars generic fanfiction jump has a section for spaceships and for other stuff where you are essentially buying items and you are gaining the ability to customize them by using points. In some cases, you'll have your own stipend for this, like you do in this particular jump right here, as I highlighted. This one is so extensive that there are actually options here that are discounted for specific origins. And that's something that is pretty rare, but it is extremely cool to see this level of dedication and detail to an item. I think that this is one of the neatest item sections that I've ever seen. I could spend probably over an hour reading off each one of these options, but I don't want to. I mostly just want to show people that there are different settings and different settings that have different emphasis on items. Something like Metroid, where the large focus of the series is going to be what the power suit can do and all of this cool stuff. It makes sense for there to be an item modification section this incredibly extensive. It is also worth noting that this is far from the only item in this particular jump. In fact, there is a full item section for each origin down below it that we will take a glance at, and those are different items. Among other things, you can get a spaceship for free, which I think is really sick, and then each origin also has, as I previously mentioned, a full item section for items that are key to that specific origin. I'm not gonna lie, my favorite origin, and this is probably comes as a surprise to no one, is Samus's origin, which is the another origin. Essentially, it makes you a second Samus, and it has the most solid set of stuff in my personal opinion. It also, very unsurprisingly, is not free. And I'm not saying that is a bad thing. Many origins in my jumps are not free, although typically speaking, that is more common with some types of jumps than with others. I think for most of my game origin jumps, the origins are free. But if you go to something like my Choose Your Own Adventure jumps, in many cases, the protagonist origins will not be free. So that's just something to keep in mind when you're deciding where you want to go and what sort of jumps you want to create yourself if you want to be a jump maker. I do think that this is going to be a good section to cut off this video because I think that this has been a helpful introduction to different types of items and has given people an insight into something that I have previously not spent a ridiculous amount of time talking about. I think items are really neat. I do think that many items, unless you are getting very powerful items, a lot of items will probably be more useful in the beginnings of a chain than they will be later on. But a well-designed, balanced jumper will probably have a healthy mix of both items and perks that allow them to be really strong and allow them to do all sorts of really cool stuff. I just wanted to go ahead and show you all some of the items that I really like, but when you are designing jumps, especially if you are designing a jump that goes to a setting that people are really familiar with, you definitely want to think very carefully about the sorts of items that you want to put into your jumps. It's also worth considering where you are going to go ahead and put items in a jump, whether you are going to make them readily purchasable or you are going to make them something that people have to earn through a scenario. I think it makes a lot of sense for items to be things that you earn through scenarios. I do think that you should be able to purchase many items, but the thing with purchasing an item is that it further reinforces the powerful part of a jumper where in the beginning, especially of chains, but of jumps generally, the biggest power-ups you get are at the start of a jump and then at the end of a jump. It is not always super easy for a jumper to grow between jumps unless they are visiting settings that regularly challenge and push them, which should be something that plenty of jumpers do, but is not necessarily fit for everyone. But it is important to keep in mind that if all of your items that you get are things that you purchase at the beginning of a jump and not things that you acquire through scenarios or through your own adventures and then fiat back either through an item or through some sort of perk, then you are going to be seeing a lot of very explosive growth when you begin new jumps. And while that is always going to be the case for jumpers to some extent, we don't necessarily have to make that problem worse by going ahead and sort of rewarding that system. So it would be cool to see more people put item rewards in scenarios, although in a lot of the scenarios I've seen, typically items are the reward. It is more common for someone, at least in the scenarios that I've read, to finish a scenario and get a new item instead of getting a new perk. But those are just some of my thoughts. I hope you enjoyed them. I would love to hear yours. I can't wait to talk to you all again, and I hope that you're having a wonderful day.